Hello, welcome back. It is week 146 on Out on That Line. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week? Oh, that good.
Better now. I'm better now. I'm fired up. I'm ready. We got some fun, playful secrets on this week's episode.
Yeah, we got
Jeff,
some fun ones here. So I don't know if you want to get right into it. I think we should just get right into it. So we're going to talk about an album later. It was definitely an album, and we're going to talk about it. But first, we're going to play a little game. So the idea here is I have to give credit to a baseball podcast that I listened to. So they were listing off the game was listing off stats from a certain year in Major League Baseball, and the person having to then guess like what year, what season that those stats were coming from. And I thought, well, this translates to music pretty easily and seamlessly. So why don't we try this for Out on That Line? So this is going to be the inaugural go round for it. And what the idea here, again, the rules just to like kind of set them in stone here. So we're going to read clues from a certain year in music. The goal is to try to make them like difficult to start. So it's hard to start with and then get easier as it goes along. So it gives you a better chance to kind of get it right. I'm going to do my best with that. It's hard to like rank these things when it's so subjective. Like could be some random ass piece of knowledge that you just know from having heard somewhere. So it's hard to gauge like the difficulty here. I'll do my best with that part. Do the rules make sense to you, Alex?
the rules do make sense. And the promise that I'm going to make going into this, because I'm fired up, I love these kinds of things, but I am frequently wrong. I'm the kind of guy that will yell out the Jeopardy answers and get a bunch right. But the minute I get one wrong, my entire identity is shattered. So all of this is a preface to say, I might get this wrong. There's stuff I might not know. You might be yelling at the screen while you're watching this. And if that is the case, I suggest you waste no time in getting into the comments on this video and telling me exactly what it is I missed and the emotions you were feeling in that moment, that charged moment where I let you down. A lot of people in my life can tell you about the times I let them down, but I'm not going to let you down for your entertainment value one way or another in any direction on this channel, which is youtube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, I can't make it any plainer. I can't. I'm desperate. You got to do something. You got to subscribe if you're not already. I feel like a big metric that I'm hearing other YouTubers use is like most of the people that watch this aren't subscribed. They watch the videos all the way through. They're not subscribed. I'd like to change that trend. You subscribe, we'll notify you when there's stuff to watch. And oh, you're going to watch it. You're going to like it. You're going to hit the little thumbs up. And you're going to leave a nice comment or a nasty comment, but you're going to leave a comment at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
That was excellent. They're always smooth. They're always good once you get into them. But when those ones where you just like slide right in, like butter on a hot July day, that's those are special. That was a special.
Yeah, oh yeah. Trying to hug a frozen turkey, slightly thawed. That's just
yeah, slicker than cheddar on a hot July day. That's what they say. All right, so we're gonna get started here. So we're gonna start. First clue. Chicago club DJ Steve Silk Hurley hits #1 in the UK with the single Jack Your Body, the first house music track to top the pop charts.
Next.
Okay.
I got rock so band, lost in that one.
Atlanta rock band, the Georgia Satellites, hit #2 US with their debut single, Keep Your Hands to Yourself, which benefits from heavy MTV rotation.
Ooh, okay. Oh, well, right off the bat, and I'm not going to burn a gas, but I'm saying I'm tempted to go early 90s. Barely the 90s. On the razor's edge of the 90s. Somewhere's in theirs. Tempted to say that off the bat. I'll log that. But we don't know for sure. Next one.
Okay. Starship, an offshoot of 60s band Jefferson Airplane, have the biggest hit of their career with the power ballad Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, which went #1 in the US and the UK.
Okay. So we are in fact in the 80s then. Yes. Okay. This changes everything. Next one.
Okay. Clue number 4. London, England band Cutting Crew reached number 1 in the US, number 4 in the UK with their first single, I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight, which is played heavily once again on MTV.
Ooh. Yes. Okay. So that tears it. 80s. Why does the year 1986 stick out in my head? I'm not officially guessing that.
I'm going to
19.
make a rule when you guess a year, we
Uh-huh.
move on to the next clue if it's wrong, and it was wrong.
Okay.
When you vocalize a year, I feel like that's a good way to
Okay.
keep things moving and shaking here.
That's fair. That's very
Okay.
fair.
The title track from Prince's ninth album, Sign of the Times, hits number 3 in the US, number 1 US R&B, and number 10 in the UK overall.
Fuck me. Fuck. I can't remember what year Sign of the Times came out. Oh no. What a nightmare. Not just gonna guess a random year. Next one.
Okay. Let's see. Where was the Okay. New York City rap group The Beastie Boys have a number 7 US hit single with You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party.
Jeff. This is so brutal. This is so brutal. I just can't place it. If I had like other pop culture events thrown in here, you know what I mean? Like
We could talk about doing that for that. I could try to swing some of those in there.
just little bits and bites. That should be like a how to be a millionaire thing.
Okay.
Who wants to be a millionaire? Where I go like I need to phone a friend. It's where you bail in with pop culture, and it helps me just a little bit.
Okay. So I've got 2 clues here. I'll go back
Okay.
to back. These were the 2 that I considered. I was like, if he doesn't get it by now, might be a wash on this one. Okay, so
Shit.
Newark, New Jersey singer Whitney Houston, you may have heard of her, scores her 4th US number 1 single in a row with I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me.
You said you were gonna go bangarang with another clue, or you're waiting for me
Yes,
to do something with this one first?
I can do, and this is the one. This is the one that I'm like, this is the one that he'll get it. Guns N' Roses, a band from the Los Angeles Sunset Strip hard rock scene, released their debut album, Appetite for Destruction, to poor reviews.
Ooh, fuck. Is it 1984?
It is not. Do you
Fuck.
want do you want one more clue, one more stab at it?
Okay, wait. I said 84 and 86.
Yep.
Hmm.
I've got one here for you. Okay. 60s San Francisco icons, the Grateful Dead, have their first top 10 hit when their single Touch of Grey hits number 9 in the US.
Was Touch of Grey 1989?
It was not. You are so
Fuck.
close. You were
88.
so close. 1987.
Fuck.
Some would say the greatest year in the history of America. Also happens to be my birth year. I figured it was a good way to kick off the inaugural game.
I know what I'd like to kick off. Your little butt, you sneaky boy.
So I think I like the way that went. I feel like for the
That's fun.
first go at it, yeah, I feel like I like the way that went. I think it's fair, like you said, if I try to add in some other pop culture stuff. So I will try to do that. And you can also come up with these games as well. And it can be the kind of thing we can like, I don't know if we want to just totally bilk everything from there, but like if you just want to spring it, do it.
Okay. Yeah, I like this. I like this is like
Yeah.
the same thing as what we did last week with the reaction beforehand. It's kind of a nice little treat when we pull it out of the bag
Hmm.
at youtube.com
Yeah.
/c / out of that line.
So I think the idea as well is I'll try to get more varied, like maybe more news type of stuff and not just, I figured by doing specific, like this thing came out in this year, like this song was released this year. I was hoping to get enough of them that you could get that bracketed in. You did. I mean, you were late 80s. It was just a matter of I'd like kept reading clues, you were probably going to get it in the next one or two, depending if you guessed like 88 or 87.
Oh, so
So
close.
yeah, you were really, really close. I think it was, yeah, that was fun. We'll do that
That
one
was
again.
good.
Yeah. Well, what do you say, Alex? We talk a little bit about an album this week, an album by Leon, Kings of Leon, whatever you want to call them, called Can We Please Have Fun? And I don't know if you've garnered anything from my introduction of this album so far, Alex, but that's the "Can we please have fun?" question. I think was answered with an emphatic no. Listening to this album,
Yeah, I've still been waiting on the fun. The fun
yeah.
never came.
Yeah,
The
there was. I
fun
mean,
never
to be
came.
fair, there was a couple spots where it sounded where they got kind of cooking. I don't know if
Yes.
lyrics were what they were, which were pretty terrible throughout the album. I think that was a glaring problem because the music was fine. It was just regular old Kings of Leon. Um, but there was maybe one or two points in the album where I was like, yeah, that was pretty good. And the rest of it, I was like, this is trash. This is
Well,
garbage.
that's that encompasses so many of the big problems on this one. First and foremost being the lyrics are goofy as fuck, and that is a Kings of Leon feature, not a bug. They're not like you came to the wrong band if you want Dylan's Masters of War, as we like to say. But they're goofy in a way that they're trying to like steer into their identity and be whimsical about it, but it's coming across as they're very serious about it. Like they're very serious about being goofy, as convoluted as that
Mhm.
sounds. Whereas my immediate thought was, you give this kind of material to someone like Idols, they will take it dead seriously and it will sound tongue in cheek and it will sound intentional. And that was a big problem on this one. Was like, yeah, musically it's like fine. The problem is they were going interesting places and then they'd get completely sidetracked by another thought and they just bank off into something like you said while they were just getting cooking. It it just became a big problem, the identity of it all, because it felt simultaneously, or it didn't feel simultaneously, like it was planned or spontaneous, which is a weird fucking thing. It
Mhm.
felt very safe at different times, and then it just felt like you had no idea for this at different
Yeah.
times. Like the low points were low.
And I think you touched on it a little bit there, and I think that's something we can go into as well is just the fact that you kind of get used to Kings of Leon being this almost chaotic band. I'm glad you brought up Idols because I think if that might be a little bit shocking to people to hear us compare the two bands, but if you really like listen to the music, there's a decent amount of similarity there, and I think the feeling you get with Idols that Kings of Leon used to deliver in spades was this feeling that like things were a little bit out of control. Like these guys were like barely hanging on by like fingertips off the edge of this skyscraper. And the music sounded like that and provided that sort of emotional kind of suspense throughout the whole thing. Um, and that's what you really liked about Kings of Leon. And they touched on that once or twice on this album. And the rest of it was you put it perfectly when you said it was very safe. These were very like adult contemporary radio ready songs. These are like Star 92.9 is going to eat this stuff up. I don't even know if they're like if they're still playing that kind of music, but at certain points this even sounded like the Arctic Monkeys latest efforts where they turn more into like kind of a lounge act than anything else. To me it just a big time swing and a miss from what I'm looking for with Kings of Leon. And I remember the last album they came out with being pretty similar. I don't think, quite as disappointing as this one was, but I remember hearing that one and being like, Eesh.
We did that
Yeah.
one on the
Yeah,
show,
we
I
sure
think like the
did.
first year.
Yeah, that and that's why I remember I probably wouldn't have listened to it otherwise, honestly, if we weren't doing it for the show. But it's to me, I wish there was more of that old Kings of Leon, but obviously there's big life changes that have happened, especially with the lead singer. I think he got himself sober because I think that was a huge issue for him. But that can also translate to like if he's not as out of control in his life, like the music might stop sounding as out of control when he plays it too. And that's kind of what I miss
No junk, no soul.
here.
Hey, listen, that's great. And that's not even my problem with the music, is like a loss of perspective or anything like that. Because again, they've never been that band, which is like, we're really gonna dive deep into the issues. Like, you look at something like the Vampire Weekend album, which I liked, I know you didn't,
Hmm.
but those were very, like, talk about, like, esoteric and whimsical. They can pull that off. Kings of Leon, you gotta, or Leon, because it's their grandpa, you just have to kind of buy into it for what it is.
Hmm.
And that's what I've always liked about Kings of Leon is the DIY, we're putting on a show kind of aesthetic. It's never, you don't get to write a song like Sex is on Fire, which is the shittiest song ever,
Yeah.
and have people totally forgive you for it and listen to you anyway and love a bunch of your other stuff. That's like its own special pocket. So remain in there. But the problem is, like, Rick Beato, goddamn him, he ruined me. I was listening to a video of his, and he was talking about like why a song wasn't good. And he's like, just doesn't really like go anywhere. And I'm like, that's so simplistic, but I'm gonna listen to this album through that lens of like, where is this going? And the big problem, other than the goofy stuff that didn't land, it would start to go to such like cool, interesting places, and then they would immediately dump out and move in another
Hmm.
direction. And oftentimes that was a totally unsatisfying dynamic shift. There were parts where it felt like they were going to build to like someone like you, oh, their arena anthem rock. Like that's,
Hmm.
I don't particularly love it, but you do a great job at it. I was expecting that direction, and then it was frequently just like shifted down. It was the weirdest fucking thing. That coupled with the like really kind of shoegazy ballads that they did, that was like a big, that shit landed with a
Hmm.
thud.
Hmm. That was, and I think those were my biggest issue songs. And I have zero issue with slower songs, with shoegaze music. I love it. Like I listen to Mazzy Star willingly. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that kind of music. But it's again, I think it's authenticity, right? I think if it's if you're it just felt like the pieces didn't quite fit. Like you've got a puzzle piece that's almost the right one, and they've got like almost the right kind of mix for what they're trying to do, and it just doesn't land. It doesn't hit. What I can say about the Vampire Weekend album is that if that's the if that's the kind of thing you like, you're gonna love that album. I just that's just not the kind of thing I like. But you can hear the difference in how produced it is, how well it's put together, that there's an intentional way that they're doing everything. And I just never felt that way about this album. I feel like they just kind of got in the studio and were like, oh, let's just kick out a few songs and see what we get here. And while I can appreciate to a point that style of writing music, I think when you come out, if you were to sit down and listen to this album and you know what you used to be able to do, like how are you going to be satisfied with this? Like that's what I question with it.
Well, and that's, yeah, that's a good point, and that's a big problem is if they did in fact go off and like put a lot of thought into writing these and putting these together and bringing it into the studio and like really honing it in, if that kind of thought and work went into it, they have a problem because it came across as, oh, you kind of just like did stuff. The stuff that didn't gel. There was perfectly by the numbers
Mhm.
stuff that worked. There was some stuff, there were pockets of it where I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. But it's Duran Duran syndrome where you have
Mhm.
like two good things and one bad thing that just cocks the whole thing up. Or vice versa. You've got two bad things and one good thing trying to hold the load and it can't. And like that was very prevalent all over this one. I guess in terms of individual songs, I want to ask you if you had a favorite and you had like a big stinker, what
So
your picks for those would be.
the big stink. So the problem with picking a big stinker is there was a certain type of song on this album, which was that kind of really slower ballady type of song, and there were several songs very similar to that. So it's hard for me to say that one of those was worse than another because I just didn't like any of them whatsoever. So it started. I mean, Ballerina Radio and Rainbow Ball starting out. You want to talk about taking the air out of your sails when you're going into an album is you start an album with a couple songs like that. And well, I can go back and maybe appreciate that if they had kept because it sounded that almost sounds like you're trying to start this bit of a storyline, right? This whole like concept going through this album. And if that was the intent, it wasn't delivered. So it's strange to hear songs like that to start an album because that's not at all what you're used to hearing from them. and think, okay, well, let's see what the rest of it is. Mustang, I thought was terrible. Actual Daydream was terrible. I think it was Don't Stop the Bleeding was one of the few that I really liked.
Oh, I
Skiing,
hated that one.
well, I mean, it's probably a total crapshoot with this album on which
Weird.
ones we were gonna like. Yeah, I just and I think I get the ones that I tended to like more were the ones that sounded like they could have been on the first like 4 or 5 whatever albums they did before the last one. And it just it was tough to get through a couple times. I mean, it just seemed like because I knew I didn't like it the first time, and sometimes I can be wrong and warm up to something, but this one just gave me the feeling like no, this you're just not gonna be into this one. I was like, I just got to listen to it to make sure that I get enough of the detail of it that if I did miss something that I don't in the future.
Yeah, and it's so bizarre too because you said you didn't like Mustang.
Hmm.
Mustang kind of Stockholm syndrome to me, where it's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. The fact that it was the first single and it's just this dung 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 that like incredibly bare bones, simplistic little verse. And then we start getting cooking into the chorus and like that, like there's a Mustang in the city. In theory, I'm like, yeah, there is a Mustang in the city. But then the next thing you say is, are you a Mustang or a kitty? And I'm like, it just you I can appreciate irony and being cute, like a big jacked up dude doing like cutesy kitten stuff. There's an irony to that that's funny.
Hmm.
But then there are times where you need the cute kitten to be the cute kitten, you need the big jacked up guy to be the big jacked up guy because he's your bouncer, he's your Kevin Nash, he's going to defend you in that moment. You got to have him. He's got to be the Mustang, not the kitty. There's like a time and a place for how you're going to approach something like that. And it takes all the fucking wind out of the chorus's sails. It could have been like a sick, pissed off chorus. And as soon as you say "goody," just like that, you're done. You're cooked. And they did that all over this album where you're like, nice, hooray. It's like making out with your crush and she coughs in your face. You're like, how did this happen? And that was all over this. So, but I did end up getting like Stockholm Syndrome by Mustang because I'm like, this song is pretty shitty, but it's also an earworm. And that's a problem.
Yeah, that definitely like an earworm, but I just the lyrics there's plenty of like stupid pop songs, like the Ketchup song. I love that song. It's a
Yes,
bop. You know
great.
what I mean? There's plenty of complete nonsense pop songs that I completely get down with. This one is not nonsense. They're I mean, well, in the sense I guess that they're words and they make sentences, I suppose. But I mean, come on. Like, are you a Mustang or a kitty? What are you all about? Like, come on. It sounds like this honestly sounds like AI music to me. They were just like I need these things mentioned in the song, make it rhyme, go. And I can't get behind that.
No, well, that's the problem. Is it's so again, it's so goofy, and I'm like you. I like a good like I fall on the novelty curve, and I can appreciate again irony and funny stuff like that. And I get the message, right? I get what they were trying to do. Like, the Mustang is adventure, the kitty is chilling at home. Are you gonna chill at home, or are you gonna go do something with your life? Are you gonna do what you're told? You're gonna take it to the streets. I get all that, I do, but it's delivered in the goofiest way possible, and that's not a smart choice in this instance. It's the kind of stuff that, like, I could see the Lemon Twigs being cheeky about it. 100 Gex would do some very,
Mhm.
like, irreverent Mustang or a kitty type thing. Kings of Leon is not you can't steer that far into being a bit with the bad lyrics that everybody just forgives. At a certain point, we're gonna stop forgiving. But all of that also is to say, like, I think it's important to shout out the things that were good on it. So I am going to shout out Nothing to Do,
Mhm.
which was probably, I actively enjoyed that song.
That I so the back half of the album with that one, like that, the back half of the album I think was definitely better than the front Like if anything, it did improve. Like it didn't get to a point where I actively liked the album overall or anything, but I think there was just more kind of stuff in the back that I did like. So that one for sure. Um, because I feel like the lyrics got a little better in the back. Like I don't know if they're because I mean you have Mustang like that again, terrible. Like who like allowed someone to do that? But this nothing to do. I feel like that was kind of your almost as close to like the old style Kings of Leon, like that use somebody kind of style songwriting. Um, that was a strong pick, and I think you're right. I think I'm like hopping all over this album and like really making it sound like it's the worst thing on the planet. It's just like did nothing for me, which I wanted it to. So I think that's why I had such a negative reaction to it. What did you already say? What one was your least favorite?
I yes, Don't Stop the Bleeding is probably my least favorite.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, yeah, and that's the problem is you talk about, like, going into it, that was my mindset was I had 2 goals. One of them was I find the concept appealing. Kings of Leon, I want to like the DIY, plucky kind of sometimes they're so shitty they're good, sometimes they're really fucking actually good kind of thing, which this album delivered, but as like a Xerox of a Xerox, like they just didn't do anything like super spectacular with it, but I was rooting for it. I went into this wanting to like
Mhm.
it and rooting for it. And I'm also really going to keep thumping for that book, what it sounds like, because it got me really interested in trying to understand my listener profile and all the
Mhm.
dimensions of it and like really key in. Don't have an opinion before you listen to it. Just like kind of take the ride with it and don't be afraid to say that sucked
Mhm.
if everyone else is jumping all over it because this album's getting decent reviews. And if people are jumping all over it and they're liking songs that I'm like, this sucks asshole. And they hate songs that I'm like, that's actually good. Like people are shitting their pants for Mustang. It's not even
Mhm.
close to the best song on this album. So there's a real weird disconnect happening on this one.
Mhm.
It's too bad.
I think there's a lot of like very dedicated Kings Leon fans. I think they're one of those bands, and rightfully so. I mean, they did have some bangers back in the day. I mean, say what you will about Sex on Fire, but like that song blew up, like was absolutely everywhere. I mean, you can't for a rock band, like that's got to be one of the biggest rock song hits in the last 20 years, I would assume.
Oh
Because there
yeah.
just I mean, there just hasn't been that many of them. I mean, Olivia Rodrigo's starting to like carry that torch again, which is nice. But like other than Kings of Leon for a long time, like there wasn't a lot. You had Foo Fighters. Who gives a shit about that? You know, but Kings of Leon like did some did some interesting things. Use Somebody I think is legitimately all-time great rock song. I mean, just a fantastic, fantastic song, the way that builds up. Um, I think when you're capable of doing things like that, and then you come out with an album of Can We Please Have Fun, you're answering your own question. No, we cannot have fun. I'm gonna say skip it on this one.
It pains me to do it, but I have to say skip it too. It just
Mhm.
wasn't the worst, meanest, most succinct thing I can say about it was it wasn't enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's not bad. That's the baffling thing about it. You can't point to it and be like, bad decision. And honestly, I'm bummed. I hate episodes like this. Not that I didn't enjoy doing this with you, Jeff, or think it was a good discussion. Now that I've completely undercut my entire point, but episodes like this are tough because we're just in agreement that it was meh. Nobody felt we're not both tearing it
Yeah.
apart, and we're not both praising it, and we're not both like kind of litigating it together. That is maybe the worst thing I can say about
Mhm.
this album is it exists in that zone where nobody gives a fuck. And I don't mean people don't give a fuck about Kings of Leon, but in terms of what you and I got out of it, I didn't give a
Yeah.
fuck. You didn't give a fuck. I don't think we got anything out of it. And that sucks because I think we both have expressed we want to like Kings of Leon. We've liked
Mhm.
a bunch of Kings of Leon stuff. Can't ever say I was a mega fan. But yeah, this is a reluctant skip it. It hurts. It hurts me more than it
Yeah.
hurts them, I'm sure.
Well, I do have some good news for you, Alex.
Hit me.
There's a album by someone named Billie Eilish dropping this week.
What?
So I think folks will have that to look forward to.
Well, this changes everything. I think next week's gonna be fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'm excited for the new Billie Eilish. I think I liked her first album more than the second one. Second one is still very good, but I think this one's going to be pretty special.
It's gonna be real interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna have to go back, and I suggest the viewers do this as well. Go back and watch our Happier Than Ever episode, or
Mhm.
listen to it. I don't think we're doing video at that point. And see and like remind myself of the things we were saying because we were both positive.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to remember where we left off going into this one. Be very interesting. A journey into one's listener profile here on Out on That Line.
This whole thing has been a journey into our listener profile.
All the way up it.
And it turns out we only like good music and we have the correct opinions on everything.
All the time.
Until next time.